you guys doing? How's it going? I had some, feedback. I had a little opportunity to do some things off the planet, and it gave me a very interesting perspective, and I think some of the things that you're trying to glean from some of the talks here are how to bring those authentic stories with a perspective that gives people insight to what you do, why you do it, and why they want to pay you to do it, right? I've had many challenges, I've overcome many obstacles, so I always talk about the right stuff is not the giving up stuff. And through my journey, I will talk to you about some of those things, but also the things that inspired me and motivated me to basically be on this stage today. I think about May of 1961, when our president at the time, John F. Kennedy, petitioned Congress to send people to the moon and back in the next decade. And we're coming up on the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing in this July, so about 75 days from now, we'll have that 50th anniversary. At that same time, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., May of '61, was trying to console the Freedom Riders that were being bombed in the Deep South. And so we have these two very diametrically opposed things happening in our country to do one of the most technologically advanced things, but we can't even get our civil rights straight in our country. And if you think about Virginia Beach, Virginia, the man and the woman, my dad, Deems Melvin, my mom in the middle, Grace Melvin, they were both middle school teachers in Virginia. They were thinking about starting a family. So how will they be raised? Where will they go to school? What will they be? What will they do? And I call this my preemie picture because I wasn't born yet. They were thinking about it. And this was the start of their family. And I didn't realize this until maybe 2 years ago. My sister, who was 2 years before me, was in my mom's belly right here. So this was her true preemie picture. How many of you are Trekkies in here? A few of you? Gene Roddenberry started this crazy idea of bringing these people together to help the universe, right? And Star Trek was born with Nichelle Nichols, who in the mid-'60s was the first African-American woman to be in a leadership role on television as the chief communications officer in the Starship Enterprise. And it was also the first time that you had the first intergalactic kiss when Kirk kissed the green woman, right? You also had the first interracial kiss when he kissed Nichelle Nichols. And this was in the 60s. I was born in 1964, and we were just passing the Civil Rights Act. And so this was monumental for television at the time. And later in life, Nichelle Nichols actually was hired by NASA to bring the first women and minorities into the astronaut program. And then you think 50 years ago, one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind, we had this most incredible thing happen. As Americans, we watched Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong walk on the moon for the first time with this grainy transmission. And I was the kid standing behind the television. Probably some of you guys don't even know what rabbit ears are, but I'm moving the antenna for my parents to actually watch this transmission. And I didn't really see what was going on until the next day when all my friends were asking me, "Hey, Leland, do you want to be an astronaut?" I'm like, "No. I don't want a crew cut. I don't see someone who looks like me." And my dad had always talked about this guy named Arthur Ashe who trained 5 blocks down the street from where I lived on Pierce Street in Lynchburg, Virginia. This guy on the right was Dr. Whirlwind Johnson, the first doctor who integrated the hospital where I was born. And he trained Arthur Ashe and Althea Gibson to win every single tournament, Grand Slam tournament. He talked about his athleticism, his discipline, his dedication, his intelligence. And so I wanted to be this guy, not this moon-walking, landing person that people talked about. Every night my mom read to me The Low Engine That Could. I think I can, I think I can. She read to me Curious George. The thing about Curious George was he had the man in the yellow hat, someone who had his back no matter what happened to him. And this was my mantra at a very early age, that I can do anything because the little engine could, and I always have one person who has my back and believes in me. And that's what we need, one person, just one person to believe in us. And then my dad drove a bread truck into our driveway. He was a school teacher, musician, and so now we're going to be in the bread business. I'm going to be delivering bread out the side of this bread truck. And my father said to me, he said, this is not a bread truck. This is our camper. I said, dude, I can read Marita bread and rolls on the side of this thing. You know, you're not fooling me. And so over that summer, we rewired the whole truck. We plumbed a propane tank to a Coleman stove. We built bunk beds that flip down. I was learning to be a scientist and an engineer, and I didn't even know it. And it wasn't until we painted the van that I realized his vision for what he wanted to do with his family. Teachers didn't make a lot of money. This was his way to take his family on a summer vacation in a bread truck converted into what looked like a recreational vehicle that waxed any Winnebago that we drove by, you know. It was so cool. And so vision, he had a vision for his family. He had a vision for converting something. And sometimes when we're looking at the label on something, that we don't realize that label is not necessarily just what it is. It can be transformed. Having that vision to see past the label, to reinvent or repurpose something, is a technique that we have. This chemistry set was agent appropriate, non-OSHA certified. My mother gave it to me when I was very young, and it went a little something like this. She said, here you go, but make sure you follow the instructions, right? I threw the instructions over my shoulder. I started mixing chemicals and created the most incredible explosion in her living room. I burnt a hole in her carpet. Now, my mom was 5'2", but she was like winding up, like had a hand in my development, you know, at a very early age. And if you look at my eyes, you see my brain is actually activated. I know that I can be a scientist now. All I need is a lab coat and goggles. And so experiential learning, getting people engaged in the hands-on, in the building, and the understanding of what these things were actually doing. And I played a lot of football. I ended up in the NFL, but this was me when I had some hair, number 47, in elementary school. And then I had this moment in high school. I was a wide receiver on a running team. Now, what does that mean? Any football fans out here? Wide receiver on a running team means you do what? You block, right? So senior year, Rustburg High School, I'm lined up, running down the sideline, the crowd is screaming, y'all scream. Running down the sideline, the crowd is screaming. The ball is coming into my hands. By show of hands, how many of you think I dropped the ball? This is audience participation. By a show of hands, how many think I dropped the ball? Dropped the ball, homecoming game, all my boys are back from college, in the end zone, embarrassed, walk to the sideline. My coach grabs my face mask, looks me in the eyes, and he says, go back out there and catch the ball. I said, Coach, I suck. I want to sit down. I don't believe in myself. He said, go do it. Second time, running down the sideline, the crowd is screaming. The ball is coming in my hands. I can read Spalding on the side of the ball, laser beam focused. But this time, I catch it. We win the game. I'm in the end zone, like doing a little dance, right? Even got down a little low. I can't do it now, but you know, my knees get low. And there was a recruiter from the University of Richmond who was looking to see if I could play for the Spiders. He heard the crowd screaming the second time. He walked back in the stadium. He saw me doing a little dance. He said, this guy failed, but he didn't give up. Maybe he can play for us. That one catch resulted in a $180,000 scholarship to the University of Richmond because I didn't give up. The little engine that could, I think I can, I think I can. And Curious George, getting in trouble, but having that man in the yellow hat. That led me to being a chemistry major in college where I could blow things up officially. And I played football there. We went 0-10 my freshman year, but we got better, and the scouts came, and I got drafted to the NFL to the Detroit Lions. Any Lions fans in here? I feel for you. Second week in training camp, I pulled a hamstring muscle. That was into my football career, I thought. But the Dallas Cowboys called me, and they wanted to sign me for the next season. So this is October. I'm waiting to go to Dallas in March. And this professor says to me, why don't you go talk to the material science group at UVA? I said, why am I going to do that? I'm going to play football. He says, well, just go talk to this guy. So I go up there, and this professor says, how much are you making driving as a courier for your agent? And I said, $4 an hour. I'll pay you $10 to be a research assistant. Sold. Moved to Charlottesville, started working as a research assistant, and then the January semester was coming around. He said, why don't you enroll in the master's program? I'm leaving in 3 months to go play football for America's team. He says, well, just think about it. Do it anyway. So I did it, and I get to Dallas, and they're videotaping the courses on VHS, and they mail these VHS. This is online learning back in the day, right? VHS tapes to Dallas. I'm catching balls during the day. I'm watching material science engineering at night. Pulled the hamstring for the second time. That's the end of my football career. But I had that backup plan. So always have that backup plan because you never know what's going to happen. And this is my last catch in the NFL. But you know, what every NFL former football player does, they go work for NASA, right? So I go to NASA Langley Research Center to work as an engineer, and I've got my master's degree, and I'm having all these epiphanies and making optical fiber sensors that are measuring strain and temperature on these aerospace vehicles. And my friend says, you'd be a great astronaut. Me? Really? And he hands me an application. I look at it, and I throw it down. And he says, well, why don't you fill it out? You can get in. I said, no, it's not for me. And then my boy, Charlie Camarda, he's from Brooklyn, knucklehead, just, hey, Leland, let me hit you a couple times. You know, smart guy, but just knucklehead, right? Charlie fills the application out, and he gets in. And I said to myself, they let that knucklehead in to be an astronaut. So the next selection, I applied, and I got in. Can you find me in the picture anywhere? Front row, come on, you got good eyes. Can you see, where am I? Middle row, bottom? You can't see, really, seriously? Dude, come on. I've got some space whack for you to find me. It's a patch. This patch will get you a flight on SpaceX's ride or Virgin's ride if you can find me. Just make it up, dude. All right, I'm up there. No, there you go. So up there somewhere, 452 astronauts. I am one of them. Never imagined wanting to be one, but I was prepared. I had my degree, I had my teamwork thing going, and so 2,500 people applied in 1998 for 25 spots. Can you find me now? Can you find me now? Really? Seriously? you get the prize. Yeah, well, if you can't find me, there I am right there. In the back. So 31 astronauts training to fly in space, right? That's what we do, fly in space. Flying jets, doing land survival training, water survival training, working in this zero-G airplane. We call it affectionately the vomit comet because people do get sick in there. All this training, and I end up going to Moscow to live for 2 years, working with the first crew that's going to the International Space Station. Bill Shepard in the middle, he's a Navy SEAL. Sergei Krikalev on the left is a flight engineer, and the pilot of the Soyuz was Yuri Gudzinko. So I'm working with them, launched them from Kazakhstan and Baikonur, and they're happy, they're in space, they're working, and now it's time for me to start training again. So I come back to Houston, and we have this 5 million gallon pool called the Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory. We have a submerged space station, a submerged space shuttle. We can float in our suits, we call these EVA suits, extravehicular activity suits. It's kind of a cross between a Michelin Man and the Pillsbury Doughboy, right? And in this suit, you have this little styrofoam block called it's called a Valsalva pad, and the arrow is pointing to it. That's my fit check. The guy's pressurizing the suit, making sure I have everything that I'm going to need for my run on the next day. And I'm ready to go do this run in the pool because the people in my class to get this training first are probably the ones that will fly first because we're building the space station. So they need construction workers to go outside the shuttle in the space station and build it up. As I go down in the pool about 20 feet, I realize that this little pad is not in my helmet. I tell the test director the Valsalva pad is not there, and I tell him to turn the volume up in the headset. And from that point on, I hear nothing but static and white noise. They rush me, they pull me out of the pool, they pop my helmet off, and the head of all the flight surgeons is walking towards me, and he's mouthing something, and I'm thinking, why is he not talking to me? He's just moving his lips. He touches my right ear. He pulls his finger away. Blood is careening down the side of my face. I am completely deaf. And they rush me to the emergency room, to the hospital. They do emergency surgery. They go in and look to see if I have something called a perilimb fistula, where your oval and circular windows are now leaking fluid out, and that can cause you to have, bilateral hearing loss, which they call what I had. The doctors, when I woke up from the anesthesia, the doctors looked like this, which was not good for me, right? They could not figure out what was wrong with me. And if they don't have a smoking gun as to what happened to you, you will never fly in space. You will be something called DNIF. I can't remember the acronym, but it means not flying, right? Duty not involving flying. And so they're trying to figure out what to do with me. And as I start recovering, I think about what happened 4 days before this accident. My parents were having a 35th wedding anniversary in Lynchburg, Virginia. So I flew from Houston to Lynchburg. We were celebrating, about to have this celebration, and I'm sitting in a car with my cousin Phyllis. Phyllis's best friend is in the back seat. Her name is Jeanette. Jeanette says to me, "Leland, I don't know you, but I want to share something with you." I said, "Okay, cool." She says, "Something's going to happen to you. No one's going to know why it happened. You'll be healed of this. You will fly in space, and this will be your testimony you share with the world." Okay, thanks. Thanks for that little bit of insight there. And she called herself a prophetess. It was just like, wow, okay, well, okay. Direct connection and all that, And then 4 days later, I'm waking up to see the faces of 3 doctors that have no clue what happened to me. I am depressed, distraught. I email National Geographic, a National Geographic photographer, to see if I can be a photographer. Because you don't have to hear to be a photographer, right? I love photography. And I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. And this friend of mine, she comes in, she was at my parents' anniversary, and she writes on a yellow legal pad, she says, "Remember what Jeanette said." And she was now my woman in the yellow hat, because she gave me that hope to think that I could get through this. I couldn't even hear a bomb drop. It was that bad. And the head of NASA came down. His name is Daniel Golden. He was going to Colorado. He turned around. There was a blizzard. And he said, in these notes, because these are part of the notes that I have a collection of 17 legal pads of conversations, he said that when the Hubble Space Telescope was deployed, it needed corrective vision because the mirror was ground incorrectly. And Congress was all over his butt because this multi-billion-dollar asset is now useless. And it never had been designed to be fixed by astronauts in those Michelin Man, Pillsbury Doughboy suits. So they had to figure it out. And they did missions where they repaired it. And one of the first images back from the Hubble was this Eagles Nebula that was a nursery where stars are actually born. And he gave me this picture. He wrote me this note saying it's 7,000 light years from Earth. It's 1 light year in length. And it's just, it makes you feel so small when you see this magnificence out there in space, which was brought to us from something that was not functioning and was repaired. Just like you, Leland. You're not functioning right now, but we're going to fix you. We're going to take care of you. And I was given this hope and this inspiration, and I was like, wow, the NASA administrator signed this for me. He even wrote his cell phone number on the back. He said, "Call me anytime." And when I got out of the hospital, like three weeks later, my hearing started to come back in this ear, only in the speaking frequencies. I'm hearing impaired in this ear. They still wouldn't let me fly. So they sent me to Washington, D.C. to work in education. They said, "You help us with inspiring the next generation, and we'll just see what we're going to do." That was in 2003. While I was in D.C., I got a phone call from my head of education at the time. She said, "Leland, what does it mean when the space shuttle is late?" I said, "How late?" She said, "The countdown clock is now counting up. The space shuttle Columbia in 2003 was supposed to land while I was up in D.C. and my friends never returned home. I was distraught again. I was driving on Highway 66 in DC to my hometown. I heard the news, turned around, went back to DC, and they sent me out to my friend David Brown. He's in the top left corner. His parents live right outside of DC, so I went there to console them on that night of the accident. And his father said to me, with tears in his eyes, he said, "Leland, my son is gone. There is nothing you can do to bring him back, but the biggest tragedy would be if we don't continue to fly in space to honor their legacy." He's talking about legacy. How do we honor the legacy? And I'm crying, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to honor them, because I'm not going to fly. They told me I won't fly. And I'm still having the hope and all of those things, but the doctors are saying you're not going to fly. So this is a picture that I took when I got assigned to my first flight. They say you can bring your family in to take pictures on picture day in your orange pumpkin suit. They didn't say two-legged or four-legged, right? So I snuck my dogs in to take the picture. But the reason I got to this point was because as we flew to the different memorial services around the country in the NASA plane, the chief of all the flight surgeons was sitting beside me on every takeoff and landing, taking notes in his little book. And he watched me clear my ears. And he said to me, he said, "I believe in you. Come to my office before you go back to Houston." And he signed this waiver, and he gave it to me. And that allowed me to get back on flight status. That allowed me to take this picture of my dogs. It's gone over the internet a number of times, and got me some gigs like this one, you know, that dog picture. But it was incredible. And so not giving up hope, believing, having someone with your back, repurposing, reinventing yourself to do the things you want to do. Flew 2008, went to the space station with this motley group of people, Rex, Steve, Dex, Leo, Stan, and Hans Schlegel. We went up on the space shuttle Atlantis, 17,500 miles per hour. We get to the space station. We're about to dock to it. And as we're getting closer and closer, there's a little problem that happens. And I have to, now, I'm not a doctor in real life, but I just play one in space. I was the crew medical officer up there, so I had to take care of a little medical situation and get that fixed before we docked to the space station. We got there, and my job was to take this multi-billion-dollar laboratory and install it to the space station. All the Europeans that were working in the space program, they'd been waiting 10 years to get this thing installed. And when I met the flight controllers who were going to be working on this in Houston one day, it's about 10 of them, they were like high-fiving me and chest bumping me, and like, "You're going to install our baby." And as I'm walking out of the room, one guy stops me and he says, "Mr. Melvin, we've been waiting 10 years. Don't screw it up." And so as this thing is getting installed, it's moving closer and closer, the motion just stops. And I'm like, "Oh, don't screw it up." But one little pull on the hand controller, it's now docked to the space station. And I thought this would be my aha moment. My primary mission objective's done. I can now kind of chill, hang out a little bit. But what happened next is that this got docked, and the first female commander, Dr. Peggy Whitson, invited us over to the Russian segment to have a meal. She said, "You guys bring the rehydrated vegetables, we'll have the meats." And so we float over with this bag of vegetables. We can smell the beef and barley cooking in the stove. And we're breaking bread at 17,500 miles per hour with people we used to fight against, Russians and Germans. We're having this meal, going around the planet every 90 minutes, seeing a sunrise and a sunset every 45, while listening to Sade's Smooth Operator. I mean, you talk about your mind getting blown. You're eating this meal, and you're looking out the window, and you're flying over your hometown. And 5 minutes later, Leo, right here, he's from Paris. 5 minutes later, we're over Paris, and his parents are probably having wine and cheese. And Yuri, up in the top right corner, is looking over to Moscow, where his parents are, and they're probably having borscht or pierogies. This blew my mind. It's called the orbital perspective. You get a cognitive shift, a change in the way that you feel connected back to the planet. And as we're coming up on this 50th anniversary of the moon landing, what is your moonshot? What is that next thing that you're doing that over the next 50 years is going to be impactful back to the planet and helping inspire that next generation and bringing communities together like us in space, working and not fighting. Because in space, if Leo, if Leland, if Hans, if Steve, if anyone flips the wrong switch, we're all dead. We're gone. And if we can just bring that perspective shift down here so more people can have that kind of sensibility of thinking that if we don't work together as a team, as a community, globally, we're dead. And it's happening. So undocking from the space station, we saw our handiwork. This $2 billion module that's there poised. And for those Detroit Lions fans in here, I had to wear the Detroit Lions jersey, even though they cut me, and I had to wear the Cowboys jersey too. And they cut me. No allegiance to either one of those teams, right? But we also do these things called stupid astronaut tricks, where we do things like this.
Wow. All right. Bike. Get. Whoa.
Oh man, you guys.
All right. Here, this is space food. An M&M sandwich.
Leland,
Food.
let me do that before you start doing that.
Too late.
Ooh, that looks yummy. Yeah, that's my sandwich, man.
We need to do a cross
dessert
cam
sandwich. Good contact.
Hazardous.
Hazardous. Oh, that's a good one, Leland. It's got a nice bubble in it, too.
Here you go, Dan.
They have to separate the straw somehow. Oh, there's
wonder
there's
if it's
M&M's
huge.
floating up there.
You know what form there.
It has to be big. It has to be small enough to be able to eat in one
There you
one
go.
hit.
Yeah.
Oh, a surface one. Look at that.
Surface.
Have we seen a surface one?
Very
That
good.
don't get captured.
Two
Well,
surface.
Here, hang on a second. Let's get this one.
Whoa.
Whoa, sorry, dude.
Oh.
That's gonna be a
You want me to
meal,
hold
man.
that? I'll hold it here. I got it.
Knock one out?
It's like, it's like croquet.
No, or I was.
Billiards. All right, you ready for separation?
Wait.
Separate. Oh, hold on.
Go
One
ahead.
more.
Oh,
No,
man.
what's the,
Dude.
what's the ice game?
Yeah.
My,
Nice.
Oh, nice.
Curling? That's gonna be a
Curling.
meal, man.
Yeah.
That's 2 sips.
Oh, there you go.
yeah, don't choke on it.
Good blobology.
Go for it, L-Dog.
You got,
Got it. Woo! Almost on the lens.
I know. Water than you think.
My mother was a home economics teacher. She didn't train us to fill our mouths with food and water. So when I got back from space, she started winding back up. And, we're short of time now. That's the last thing I think I want to show you. Well, this last thing, old school, new school. Pharrell and I gave this montage to Quincy Jones for his work in the arts and helping people get inspired all around the world. And I'm a supporter of not STEM education, but STEAM education, because the arts is so important. And then there's Buzz Aldrin, who walked on the moon 50 years ago, this coming up July. So with that, I think we'll take some questions. We have time for some questions? We have this nice little thing that I can throw at you. Anyone have any questions? Don't be shy. No questions. How do you use the bathroom in space, Leland? Any questions? Any questions? You want more slides? Here we go, over here. Let me get. Nicely done.
How'd you feel about
Okay,
Elon Musk?
hold it up.
Oh, it's a microphone?
There you go,
Oh,
there you
wow,
go,
okay,
there you
cool.
go.
Hi,
I wasn't just trying to hit you, okay?
you're fine, you're fine. How'd you feel about Elon Musk's plan to colonize Mars in, I think it was 2025?
Awesome, awesome. If we can get more people going to space to get the same effect that I got and my colleagues have gotten, the world will be a better place. This perspective shift, I mean, looking back at our planet from Mars, this little pale blue dot would even be more transformative. And so I think, I mean, if all of us in this room could go to space and you could then spin that out to the world, to the universe, to get more people thinking about working together as a team and a family and depending on each other, it's only a good thing. So Elon, Virgin Galactic, Richard Branson.
Who will get there first?
Everyone, yeah. Everyone that has that opportunity to go, I think we should go. I mean, I have no hate on anyone. I was NASA. I don't work for NASA anymore, so no hate there. But, let's get transformations in the mind to get people to change. Yeah.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you for everything you've done.
Throw it back. Can you make it? Can you make it?
Let's go.
Nice. Whoa, whoa. All right, who's got the next one? Up in the top, someone up in the top. Come on, I want to throw this thing. Over here.
I've heard space has a weird smell. Is that true? And I guess
It's a
the
what?
vac has a weird smell in
Everything
space.
has a weird smell.
Probably in the station it
Yes.
smells weird, but the vacuum of space, is that true? It's got a weird
So
smell?
I didn't do a spacewalk because of my hearing situation, but when the people will come back into the airlock from space, if you're pointing to the sun, it's positive 250 degrees Fahrenheit. If you're pointing to the deepness and blackness of space, it's minus 250. Lots of times when they come in the hatch, they've been pointed to the darkness and coldness of space. And it seems like there's this metallic smell boiling off of their suits. So it smells like burnt metal as they're coming in. So that's the smell that I associate with space. The smell I associate with the space station is when the space station guys, they don't have a shirt for every day. So you have to float through their running shorts in their shirts. So it's like people are camping and they're just camping for a long time and not, washing their clothes. So two different smells, but thank you. All right, come on, over here, come on. You got it? You get a patch for trying though.
I blew it. Favorite and least favorite meals in space?
Ooh, good one. Favorite, maybe not meal, but dessert is the chocolate pudding cake. Pudding and chocolate and cake together. Wow. Least favorite is probably the chicken tetrazzini that's rehydrated and warmed. It's kind of like that food you ate in elementary school when they plopped it onto the tray and it just kind of
Appetizing.
yeah.
All right, follow-up question. Are you still a Dallas Cowboy fan?
Am I
Or
still?
were you Dallas Cowboy fan?
They cut me.
So no.
You answered that question. They cut me. No love for the Cowboys. Over here, okay, over the cameras. You ready? Oh! Nicely done. Woo! I love it. Got wide receivers in here.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing your stories. Those are just fascinating. I'm sure that you had disagreements with your colleagues or, just, of any kind working in that kind of intensity. And so do you have any story that you could share about that and how you were ultimately able to kind of agree and move forward or
Yes.
anything like that?
Yes. So a lot of astronauts are triple type A, some are quadruple type A. I was working the robotic arm. We were moving some people on the arm with a 600-pound payload, and they were moving it over. And there was a colleague beside me. We were working together, and I was in charge of all the robotics. And in all of our training, I said, the only time that we'll stop is if something's unsafe or, we need to take care of something. And I asked him to give me a camera view. We didn't have a window to look out of, so all of your views were cameras that were pointed outside the space station that you were looking at on monitors. So the only way you could see the clearances is if you had up enough cameras to see the trajectory of where you were flying. I asked for a camera view. The person said, oh, you don't need that. I said, give me the camera. He said, oh, you don't need that. I called to the guy on the arm. I said, we're slowing down motion. We're stopping motion. We stopped the motion. And I turned to my colleague and I said, look, if you don't give me what I need, you're hurting me. And I want you to leave right now. I'll do this by myself. I'll do it slower, but it'll be safer. And I think he was nervous. I think, whatever was going on. But he realized his mistake and he got back on board. And it could have been really ugly because we could have been just flying and fighting and then someone's dead. And that's not cool. So that happened. And other things have happened that you just have to really break it down to what were the rules set to do these operations, and just go from that basis. Yeah, good question. Can you throw it to him? I don't want to be involved anymore. Good shot. Nicely done.
So I'll give you a choice. Either having been in space or these stories about people who had your back.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of them in your story. Anything different on a daily basis, or your habits, or just the way that you behave in the world different now?
Because of space, because of going to space?
Because of space, or because of these people that
Yeah.
took care of you?
So for the people that I keep in touch with my coach from high school. I moved back home to Lynchburg, Virginia, and I talked to him, I've talked to him maybe 3 or 4 times since I've been there, thanking him. I try to be that person for other people, mentors. I met a guy when I was in San Diego before the Red Eye here who was doing motivational speaking and stuff, and he's trying to learn how to break in, and I sat down and talked to him for a couple hours. Things that I do differently, I live on some property back in Virginia. I have a tractor. Tractors can have arms and things cut off if you don't do it right, and I'm very meticulous and disciplined about how I do things now. And I think having procedures in space where you follow the procedures and that keeps you from dying, I've adopted that philosophy and kind of way of living in everything I do now. And some people think it's pretty prescriptive. I don't think it's prescriptive, but and I don't do it for every single thing, like chewing bubble gum and walking or something. But it's made me really think about the things that are important to keep me from dying on the ground. Yeah.
Hi, I'm from Detroit, so thanks for playing.
Go Lions!
How long did it take you to go through the training process?
So I got into the astronaut program in 1998, and I didn't fly until 2008. So there was a 10-year span of going through this hearing thing, training, all of these different things. And when I got to space, I got assigned for the next flight, and I flew in 2009. I didn't get to those slides, but there was incredible moments when we were in space together. The first time the 2 African-American men were in space at the same time, Bobby Satcher and I. Just incredible. We were talking to kids through the Tom Joyner morning show, and now they're aerospace engineers that we talked to back then because they saw us in space. And so I would go, yeah. So another thing I would say is you never know who's watching you. You never know who's listening and modeling after you. And you may be creating another you by the things that you do, or turning off another you by the things that you're doing. And I saw that so powerfully when I'm wearing this blue flight suit, how many kids that I've affected and impacted. There was one kid recently who, I spoke at the graduation of George Mason University. When he was 16, he was at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and I was in this suit giving a talk, and I said, you can do this one day. He graduated with an aerospace engineering PhD, and he wants to be an astronaut. So when he was 16, he had this modeling that he was seeing, and he was watching me from that point on. Saw my mission, saw everything, and it's just powerful what you can do just being that man or woman in the yellow hat. Totally. So, all right.
Thanks.
Next, do we have is this time right? We have 8 minutes and 51 seconds? Oh, it's going up. I think you guys are supposed to have a social or something, right? Do we have, what are we going to do with the time? Any more questions? One more question? Wrap it up? Was that thumbs up to wrap it up? Cut it? Is that cut? One more. All right, one more question.
Hello? Oh, it is on. Sorry. Yeah, so being in zero gravity, obviously you're not using your muscles, and so was there a rigorous workout routine that you guys had to do on the space station at all? Yeah.
To get ready for space?
Well, so in zero gravity, you're not using your muscles normally as you would.
Oh, yeah.
So when you come back to Earth,
So
your body is
the long duration astronauts like Scott Kelly, They have something, we have something called a resistive exercise device where you can do squats and bench press and overhead press and deadlifts, because if you don't work the big bones in your body, the calcium will actually leach out and you'll be osteoporotic when you come back home. So we have a treadmill where you run on a tread, but you got bungees that are holding you down. And my colleague, Sunny Williams, she ran the Boston Marathon in space on that treadmill. And then we have a bicycle that we ride also. So 2 hours of exercise every day while you're up there, just to ensure that you don't lose bone density and atrophy. Your heart gets smaller in space because you're not pumping the blood from your feet. There's something that happens with some people's eyes. The intraocular pressure in your brain pushes on your eyeballs and causes your lenses to change shape. So if you don't wear glasses before going to space, we have different prescriptions in space to take care of that if it does change. And then when you come home, sometimes it doesn't change back. So we're trying to figure out all these things that if we go to Mars one day, how will we counteract these types of physical changes to the body? Okay, I think that was the last question. One last thing, perspective shift. Get your perspective shift down here. Have your grit, have your perseverance. Make sure you find your man or woman in the yellow hat, and believe that you can do anything you put your mind to, like the little engine that could. Godspeed on your journey, and thank you for everything. Please.